create lasting impact. And today I have my special guest, helping companies bridge the gap between product and revenue. None other than Mr. Bruce. Wow.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here, Daniel. I appreciate the introduction.
Welcome, Mr. Bruce on Entrepreneurship 101. And can you please introduce more about yourself that I missed?
I'd be delighted. Thank you again. So I've been doing marketing for the past 40 years. I started in New York City on Madison Avenue at an ad agency called Ogilvy. And I've focused on becoming an expert over the years in building brands and generating sales and capturing market share for virtually any kind of company, from startup to late stage, high tech to packaged goods, even for profit and nonprofit. So I've worked on brands like Owens Corning Fiberglass, Lever Brothers, Intel, and I started my own firm in 2002 as one of the very first fractional CMO companies in America. And basically working with young and growing companies that needed marketing help but couldn't afford a full-time employee to run their marketing. So since our humble beginnings 24 years ago, we've guided marketing for more than 400 companies and launched over 1,200 products, generating about $1 billion in incremental revenue for the top lines of our portfolio companies. So there you have it.
Well, Mr. Bruce, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world here on Entrepreneurship 101. We salute you. We celebrate you. Yeah, definitely. So today, let's talk about, well, being you. Let's talk about how you helping companies bridge the gap between the products and revenue. You've led the launch of more than 1,000 products over 20 plus years. What is the single most common reason a strong product fails to generate meaningful revenue? The thing you see over and over that founders never see coming.
Honestly, it really boils down to one thing. They don't understand their target customer and the pain that they're solving with the product. They don't
Mm.
equate the product with the pain that it fixes. And there's ways to figure that out so that you don't miss the mark on that point. A lot of people will talk about competitors or pricing or all those things. I find that those are ancillary pieces that can be easily solved. But until you equate your product with the true pain that a customer has and see how you can solve it, you'll never get the traction that you need in the market.
Well said, Mr. Bruce. And you were an early pioneer of the fractional CMO model, positioning your agency that way so early as 2005, long before fractional became a buzzword. What a problem where you are seeing in the market that led you to that model, and why is it become more relevant, not less than in the last 20 years?
No, thank you. Great question. So back 24 years ago, when we were starting this model, I actually visited with the investment groups that I'd been working with in startup companies as the head of marketing. These were companies that were putting in, at the time, $3 to $5 million into various companies in their portfolio. And I had started in advertising in New York City, where companies had big budgets. We're talking 2 to 400 million a year that they could put into advertising. Well, these investment groups had companies that they'd invested in that certainly didn't have 2 to 400 million to spend, but they may have had 500,000 to spend. And because they had small budgets, they couldn't get the attention of the local agencies in town who were trying to find clients that would spend maybe $3 to $5 million. So I approached the venture capital community and said, I've done a series of successful startups. Maybe I could help 4 companies at a time as their part-time marketing executive, fractional, if you will. And I said, do you have um, basically any clients in your portfolio that are struggling with marketing, and they always have at least one company that just wasn't either figuring it out or didn't have the right people involved. And so they were the ones who introduced me to their portfolios and said, can you help this company? Can you help that company? And so we operated on a way where we became their head of marketing, but they paid us only a portion of the amount that they would pay a full-time person. So we could work with them for 3 to 4 years and get them growing properly to where they could then afford a full-time marketing person. And then they could go public or get acquired or whatever their exit strategy was. But because we did it for so many different companies in so many different industries, you get really good at knowing what principles apply universally to any company in any industry. And we were able to replicate those principles and bake them into our process so that any company could succeed if they did the right things in the right order. And that's really where Sprout has grown and shined over the years.
Well, Mr. Bruce, thank you for that CMO legacy. You say most companies know what they build and they even know what it's for, but they don't know how to connect with it to in a way that leads consistent growth. Walk us through that gap.
So it's interesting, as we do really deep research on the customers, the target customers, we're looking for the key pain points that most of these customers have. So we're looking for commonality. I don't want to solve a problem for one company or customer that's unique and no one else has that problem. I want to solve a problem that most people are struggling with. So if we do the deep research with our target customers and we uncover, let's say, 4 or 5 consistent pain points that they're having, then we look back at the product and say, are we solving all of these pain points, or are we solving 2 or 3 of them? And if we uncover, say, 2 or 3 pain points that we can absolutely, with credibility and reality, solve, then we focus on matching up the messaging to hit those pain points. So if I'm in a sales conversation with this customer, let's say I'm not going to market at the moment, I'm just going to talk to them. I'm going to spend time uncovering this pain. As soon as they share that one pain point I'm looking for, then I take all the attributes of my product and I deliver them right on top of that pain. So this is how we solve that pain thoroughly and completely. I don't talk about anything else that the product might do. I don't distract. I don't throw a lot of features at that person and hope that something sticks. I live and walk with them in their pain, and I make sure that my product can deliver on solving it. Once I do that, I can now take that to the marketing message and push that out more broadly to the industry and say, if you have this problem, consider these ways to solve it. And now people take interest. Now people are open to having the next discussion. If I can't map to a pain that I'm solving, well, guess what? Nobody is going to care about my product. And if I can't find a pain that most people have or that's a broad problem or issue, then investors won't be very interested in my product either. So I'm looking for a pain that's consistent, that if I solve it, it will matter, and that I know my product can actually do the job at solving it.
Well said, Mr. Bruce. You've worked across everything from high tech to consumer goods, startups to Intel and Lever Brothers. What specific example of a company that had a brilliant product but was completely misaligned with its market, and what did the fix actually look like?
Hmm, that's a great question as well. So if I think about one product that comes to mind immediately, it was a product, and I probably can't divulge the company name at this point, but they had a product that was a fireproof piece of fabric, and the fabric literally worked to prevent somebody who's wearing it from burning. The president gave me a demonstration at my first meeting with him where he pulled a piece of this fabric out of his drawer and laid it across the palm of his hand. Then he reached down and grabbed a penny and put this penny in on top of the fabric, which was on top of his hand. And then he opened his bottom drawer and he pulled out a blowtorch, a handheld blowtorch. He lit the torch, turned the torch onto this penny, melted the penny in front of my eyes to molten copper, tipped the fabric with his hand, and the penny literally slid off and dropped into his garbage can. Luckily, he had some other things in the garbage can. And I watched this demonstration. They lifted off the fabric, and he said, "Now my hand's warm, but if anybody else did that on their hand, they would be going to the hospital right now." He said, "This is my product, and nobody knows how awesome it is." And then I looked on his wall, and he had this framed picture with an article in Fortune magazine with his feet up on the desk, and his socks were made out of this fabric, and his feet were on fire. So here he is, with these socks on fire at his desk. And I thought, that's an incredible feature article in this major magazine. How many sales did you get out of that article? And he said, zero. He said, I didn't have any of the structure in place to be able to equate what I solve with what the pain was that somebody was having. They just knew, oh, fireproof fabric. We started working with them to focus on race car industry, steel mill workers, anything in the steel industry, right? Direct connection between problem that I solve, I will keep a driver safe while they're racing, because we found out that drivers are not afraid of breaking a bone, they're afraid of burning up. That's their big fear. So if they can dress head to toe with the special fabric, if they're in a crash, they will be able to walk away, they won't burn up. Steel mill workers, they're moving molten steel, right? Like the copper or penny example, all day long. That steel can come in contact with moisture, water, and blow up and put molten steel on your body, you will die. So if they can wear this protective clothing, it's literally life-saving. Once we equated the problem that people were having physically with the product's efficacy, the company just exploded with growth. So they had not found the application, but they had a product that actually worked brilliantly. And we just put those two things together.
Well said, Mr. Bruce. You helped generate over $1 billion incremental revenue for portfolio companies. What's one multi-million dollar mistake you have been repeated or neglected across multiple industries that could have been avoided with better to go market thinking before launch?
Great point. So many times companies will market their way to what they think would happen and realize later it's going to be a problem. It didn't work like we'd planned. So I remember one company was doing in the oil and gas industry, they were creating uh, synthetic diamonds for the drill bits. They would go on the heads of these drill bits that would drill holes and drill for oil, right? Well, these drill bits were so hard and so strong and so great that they didn't wear down as quickly as other cheaper products. But they found over time that some of other from other countries, people were bringing in products that were much cheaper, and they were beginning to undercut what they were doing. And so they started to discover whether they could lower their price to be able to compete at this lower end. What we realized is that they were eroding their brand cachet at this higher end. And so we helped them to actually create a line extension lower that would provide for market support in these cheaper diamond cutters and maintain their strength in the high end diamond market without giving up their overall market share. Usually, you learn about that pretty quickly when you start to see where brand erosion might happen. And luckily, we were able to react quickly and resurface their brand and support their higher end products while also entering the market at a lower end. You see this commonly in the car industry, where you have a company like, Porsche and Audi and Volkswagen, all the same company, but they have brands that have a certain place that they play, right? You can't sell a $400,000 Volkswagen and you don't want to sell a $20,000 Porsche. Those things have to stay in their brands. That's what we work with companies on. Where does your brand start and stop, and where do you have to create a new brand so you don't risk losing millions of dollars?
Mm. Well said again, Mr. Bruce. And you've said that doing more marketing does not necessarily lead to growth. That's a counterintuitive. Most founders think more ads, more content, more channels equals more revenue. What does more marketing actually hurt, and how do you know when you're just adding noise instead of moving the needle?
So, another great question. So, moving the needle and adding noise, if I think about strategically what companies face as they're looking to expand their marketing, you can get to a point of what we call diminishing returns, where you spend another dollar, but you don't necessarily get $2 back. You may get a dollar 10 cents, and you may get 90 cents. So you certainly can maximize a given channel of marketing to the point where it's no longer profitable for you. The way we address that is really twofold. First of all, we work with companies right up front to put in a dashboard where they can track with us together what kinds of results are happening and at what cost. So, how many customers are converting? How many do we need at the top of the funnel to get people out at the bottom of the funnel? And how much does it cost to get that next customer? The other part of the equation is, what is the lifetime value of that customer? What is it worth to me to get the next customer? If I get that amount, let's say it's $50 per new customer, then my dashboard tells me if I'm off or if I'm tracking to the right amount. Then the second thing is, we like to what we call launch and layer our marketing. So we launch with vehicles that are lower cost, that generate results, that start the flywheel moving, and then we layer on top possibly more expensive vehicles that will lift the whole machinery so that we get more and more results. For example, I might start with search engine optimization, or like we say today, AEO, right? I might start with some paid social media advertising. I get the results for that and I see in my dashboard how it's working. And then I decide I'm going to now try localized radio, or I'm going to do digital television in a given market and see if I can take those results and 10x them, right? Grow them dramatically. I wouldn't know that if I tried to do everything at once. I wouldn't know how each thing contributes if I just did it all together. So we launch and then layer on top. And then over time, we can see when we start to maximize the value of what we're getting for a given media vehicle, then we would add another vehicle because you're going to get a different audience, a different skew, and we see again that steady growth. You can certainly get to where you're spending too much, but the dashboard will tell you where you're off. And what I tell clients as well is, if you're able to hit the cost per acquisition, the goal that you're after, let's say it is that $50, that magic number for every new customer. If we hit that consistently, in theory, you should open the floodgates of your budget. You should grow your marketing because that equation will hold for a season. Now, you will get to diminishing returns at some point, but your dashboard will tell you when that starts to happen.
So, Mr. Bruce, what's the difference between repositioning and just refreshing your messaging. How does a company know when they need fundamental repositioning versus just a better execution on their current positioning?
There's a number of factors for knowing whether you have to reposition or just update or refresh. If you look at major brands out in the market, I'll give you two examples. If you look at Coca-Cola over the decades that they've been a brand, they have refreshed and updated their brand image over time, but it still
Mhm.
has that consistent feel. You still know it, recognize it. You look at the old style and it's, very applicable to the early 1900s, but the current style is applicable to now. If you look at repositioning, I think of a company like Kentucky Fried Chicken, right? It used to be a name that people knew in long form, right? Kentucky Fried Chicken. Fried became kind of not a positive word in the market. And so over the last few decades, they've truncated to be KFC. And KFC has been the word they want everybody to think of. And so um, it was very deliberate for them to reposition as this great chicken KFC at shorthand and not emphasize the original name. If I think of companies that have attempted to update their brand, sometimes it doesn't go too well. Sometimes they step into like a new chapter, but the current customer base reacts negatively. I think of a company like Tropicana that came out with a new package design that took away the orange with a straw in it, which had been, again, a tried and true brand identity, and went with just a block up square color. That basically got a very negative reaction with the loyal clientele for Tropicana, and they scrapped that approach and went back to their core brand. So sometimes companies attempt to refresh, but they go maybe in a slightly wrong direction and have to retrench. But usually we find repositioning takes some testing and really understanding, is this the right way to reposition? I think the only exception would be if the brand is damaged in some way. There's a problem there, something's happened that has damaged the brand. Then you have to move rather quickly, because otherwise you risk losing your company. I think it's also worth noting that one other thing happens. Let's say that a brand has something catastrophic that happens. Say there's a shooting in a fast food restaurant, or something that's really just bad, right, for the company, for humanity. Usually what happens in those moments is companies will pull immediately all advertising, all marketing, they'll just stop. And the PR machine will turn on as a damage control and communication to the industry, because you don't want to remind people tomorrow of what happened today, right? You want to basically go dark and let PR kind of sell the day. Again, it's not a manipulation tactic. It's just trying to save your company so that this terrible incident doesn't just become terrible for everybody, including the company itself. Um, these are things that I think are really lessons learned over the years with companies, what to do and what not to do.
Well, Mr. Bruce, to wrap up our discussion for today, you've been at this for 40 years, from Madison Avenue to Utah's tech community. What's the piece of go to market wisdom you believe for the first decade of your career that you now know was completely wrong?
Mm. So many times I think that people feel if they just create a compelling brand, something interesting, engaging, that everything will happen naturally. And it's just not true. A compelling brand is just the first chapter of your book. Your job is to create new chapters and refresh that book and make it better and better over time. Always being consistent. I would say if you could choose between a creative brand and a consistent brand, I would always choose consistency over creativity, because people like to have something they're comfortable with over time. And I tell all of my CEOs, you will tire from your brand sooner than your audience will, because you see it so much more every day. But for them, it becomes special, and you want to make sure you keep it so.
Definitely, people, consistency is the key to success, one of the ingredients. And Mr. Bruce, can you please invite our listeners to support your business, your projects, or anything you want to promote on Entrepreneurship 101?
I appreciate it. Yes, I'd encourage you all to check out sproutmarketing.com. You'll learn about what we are and what we're not, and how we approach things, how we look with companies to set their foundation properly and work on the plumbing, like how people find you and connect with you and buy your product. And then we go out into the market and generate awareness and outreach. So I'd welcome that any day, all day.
Well, thank you again, Mr. Bruce, to sharing your wisdom and knowledge to the world. I have one more question before I will let you go. If a founder is listening right now with the product they believe in, flat or inconsistent revenue, and a sense that marketing is not working, what is the first they think they should stop doing, and the first thing they should start doing starting tomorrow?
I think they should probably stop spending for the moment and double check their understanding of their core target audience and customer. That's where I would start.
Well said, Mr. Bruce. And again, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure, Daniel. Thank you again.
Modicam people, see you soon.